All right. Small group today. I'm hoping we see some more folks show up, but as always, I'm Molly Grant and welcome to Back to Basics. Today's session is a little different than the other ones we've been doing. We've been focused on the different solutions within what we term the Catalyst Full Stack. And today we're going to talk about a great way to sell those solutions, which is with our new EA 3.0. So enterprise agreements are a great, easy way to bundle different technologies together and sell them to your customer. Our customers are looking for better ways to consume our solutions. So we're fortunate to have on hand today Robin Bellings and Amanda Seals, who are going to be our presenters on the EA 3.0. But before we get to them, just as always, a couple quick reminders. This is designed to be a high-level overview. So if you're looking for a deep dive, you might be disappointed, and I hope that's not the case. So just a quick reminder there. Also, I am recording the session. We will post the deck along with the recording on Sales Connect after the sessions. It might not show up till Monday due to the facelift that Sales Connect is undergoing. But look for them there if you want to see them afterwards or send your friends there. And then lastly, you all are on mute, but please make this interactive. Ask questions in the Q&A panel. Stand by till the end. You can raise your hand and I'll take you off of mute and we can go that way. You can ask questions. This is your chance in a safe environment to ask lots of questions. So with that, just a quick reminder, as I always do, about Catalyst Full Stack. We designed this messaging to reach customers and address their business needs and help them drive business outcomes. And we identified 4 areas where customers were coming to us saying, I need your help, Cisco. And that could be around transforming their infrastructure, securing their enterprise, helping them handle applications that all used to be in the data center that are now redistributed everywhere. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, is empowering hybrid work. How do we help them power hybrid work? So with that in mind, we developed the full stack, and as we call the full stack, we're talking about 10 different enterprise networking solutions. Under the Connect category, we have the Cat 9K switching and wireless, along with Cat 8K routing. Then under Secure, we have ICE, Umbrella, and Secure Network Analytics, used to be known as Stealth Watch. And then lastly, under Automate, you really have Analyze and Automate together, and that's with Thousand Eyes Spaces Act, along with DNA Center and SD-WAN. So with that reminder, I'm going to throw it to Amanda to talk about EA 3.0 and how it works for your customers. So Amanda, I'm turning it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Molly. Good afternoon, everyone. So as Molly mentioned, if you've been attending these back to basics sessions, you guys have learned about the Catalyst Full Stack and that solution. Now you're armed with the tools needed to sell the full stack solution. And now we're going to dive into, okay, what's the best way to sell it? So we have 2 ways of selling solutions at Cisco. We have transactional and we have enterprise agreements. So let's talk about why EAs are the best purchasing vehicle, not just for the customer, but for us as sellers and for us at Cisco. So you can see here 3 numbers up here that I'm going to drill into because they're very important to your bottom line, to your bookings, and to your overall goal setting and forecasting. So guys, notice on the left-hand side, we're going to start there. Customers who buy a single architecture through an EA spend twice as much as their peers who buy transactionally, okay? So they're doubling the amount of spend throughout the life cycle of that enterprise agreement contract. Then if the customer expands their single architecture EA to across architecture EA, which by the way is what we would sell based off of the full stack solution, that would be a cross architecture EA. Those customers who have cross architecture EAs spend 3.5 times more than customers that just have the single architecture EA. So you can see how these are building blocks that just start to expand the solution, expand our footprint with the customer, and of course that results in more bookings revenue for you. So ultimately, not only do we get more revenue from these customers throughout the life cycle, but we see more adoption. So you see that last bullet there, 35% more consumption and more adoption with EAs. So what does that mean? That means we become true partners with our customers, right? So now you have a reason to talk to them every year. We'll go into detail about this, and look at their consumption and make sure that they're adopting. So this really, EAs give us the opportunity to have a partnership with our customers, not just a customer and vendor relationship. All right, so as we look at the benefits to Cisco, one of the biggest complaints that we get from customers and internally, one of our biggest complaints is license management. All right, it is one of the most painful things that our customers experience. And we ask them, what's the main thing that you hate doing, or one of the main reasons you don't like working with Cisco? It's because the licensing is so complex. Licensing in general, doesn't matter if it's Cisco or not. It can be complex, hard to manage, and then you put the vast array of our portfolio together and it becomes very complex. So what you're seeing here is a good example of what a lot of our customers look like. And it even gets more complex because here you see that this customer in particular has a DNA EA, has a SmartNet contract, WebEx, has all of these different contracts. But it gets even more complex because when we look at DNA specifically for switching requires 3-year mandatory attach. What does that mean? That means if a customer wants 10 switches today and transactionally, they buy those 10 switches and then they have a contract that ends 3 years from now. Then in May, if they want to buy 10 more switches, that's another contract that starts in May, ends 3 years from that May date. And then if that happens again in October, they have another 10 switches, starts in October, ends 3 years. So you can see how just for DNA, the customer is going to have starts and renewals at all different times throughout the year. It can be very cumbersome and complex to manage. In fact, Robin, we were looking at some of these stats the other day about how many contracts or renewals the average customer has per year. So see if you remember, what was the average number of DNA, just for DNA switching, renewals that a customer has in 1 year?
A pop quiz. I love it, especially when I know the answer. So I remember it's about 7 renewals annually that our customers have on DNA alone. And I even believe that it was about 7K per renewal. So that's a very tiny number. That's why we call them microtransactions, right?
Yes. Yes. So think about that. So this is not only a pain for the customer, right? So now they've got on average 7 renewals just for DNA per year. Times that by 3 years, that's 21 renewals that we're chasing down with the customer that are only 7K a piece. All right, we don't have time to chase those down. Our partners don't have time to chase those down, and our customer doesn't have time to manage that either. So if we put them all together into an enterprise agreement, along with their SmartNet, their WebEx, their AppD, we put everything together into a buying program, and now we have one contract, one renewal date, we have simplified terms, and it's all consolidated into one agreement. I want to highlight something else, guys. We now have flexible payment options embedded in our offer. What does that mean? We've always had Cisco Capital, and it is still there today for some of our customers, right? We also have partners who can help finance these agreements. But now we also offer embedded, just like our Flex program, we offer embedded flexible payment terms. So you can select annual billing for your customer, because I hear all the time, my customer loves the idea of an EA, but they don't have budget to pay upfront for 3 years. All right, well, we have annual billing now that's available. So make sure that you look at that as well whenever your customer says, I don't have budget for an enterprise agreement. Now, Robin, we provided a lot of information here about the benefits to the sellers, but let's take a step back because we introduced 3.0 recently. Let's take a step back and kind of show them what a 3.0 EA looks like at a high level.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. And before we can do that, I really want to talk about a couple of concepts and just go through these concepts just so that you know exactly when we start talking about solutions and where this is all fit together. So let me start by building out the graphic that we use to represent an EA. You can see this circle in the middle, and you can see in there's like 5 different areas which represent 5 different portfolios. So when we are grouping a number of solutions together, we call them a portfolio. You have, of course, the network infrastructure portfolio, which is DNA, Meraki, cloud networking. But then you also have applications infrastructure. You've got collaboration, you've got security, and you've got services. So we've got 5 different portfolios. And each of those portfolios is made up out of a number of suites. So as you can see here, we've got in network infrastructure, we've got 9 different suites that are actually part of that portfolio represented by these bubbles. So what we're going to refer to quite a bit in the rest of the presentation is you have a portfolio, and that's made up out of suites. And really that's what we want to make sure that everybody understands how we refer to that. Now that you understand the lingo, let me start looking at, why or how do we position the benefits and all the value that these contracts bring to our customers, right? And really, when you have that conversation, we want you to focus on like 3 different key pillars. And I know they sound like very high-level words, but we'll unpack each of them. Or Amanda's already unpacked premium experience with a single contract, but let me look at the other ones as well. One is business agility. We want to make it easier for customers to get access to our technology. So instead of going through a full transaction or purchase motion, ordering and POs and all that stuff every time, we're going to all bring it together in one agreement. And then we also, as Amanda just said, we want to make it easier for a customer not just to buy that software, but also to consume it, and to, once they've consumed it, to keep managing it. So there is benefit in there for them. And then finally, the last thing that we're going to double click in is the unmatched value. There is a number of key benefits that we provide to customers and that have an enterprise agreement that they do not have in the transactional model that Amanda just explained earlier. So let me unpack, and let's start with business agility here first. What we really refer to there's a couple of things. First of all, it's the entry point, the barrier to entry. What is the minimum threshold that you need in order to position a contract with your customer? Well, that minimum is 100K. Used to be a higher number, but right now we brought it down to 100K. That is 100K of software investment over the entire term of their agreement. So if your customer gets a 5-year agreement, that is 20K per year. That is not a massive investment for most of our customers. So really, most of the customers that you will be speaking to will be eligible for an enterprise agreement. And then, of course, it's not just about adding in one technology. It's about making it easy for us to start upselling, to broaden our footprint with the customer. That's why we now have like 2 types of suites in there. And you'll see that applied in just a bit, but really what we have is our full commit suite, which expects an enterprise-wide commitment. What is an enterprise-wide commitment? All the software from Cisco that the customer is using in a specific area, for instance, for their switching, they have to commit all that inside of the agreement. And that enterprise-wide commitment needs to be above 50K for that full suite. Or we do a partially committed suite, which basically, if the customer has an enterprise agreement, they want to add in a switching suite and just add 5 switches to that, we can offer that as a partially committed suite now as well. There's going to be some different benefits, and we'll review those in a bit. And then finally, we wouldn't create the vehicle to provide solutions to our customers if we wouldn't make it easy for them to, once they look at, for instance, infrastructure, they can very easily add in security features. They can add in services to make sure that they can manage that solution. So really making it easy for us to add these architectures is critical and is built into the agreement. That's how we define business agility. Now, let me take you to the other one, which I just mentioned, which is unmatched value. We've got a number of key differentiators inside the EA that you do not get as a la carte customer. First one is protecting your investment with things like being able to shift from one license to another license during the term of the agreement. So if your customer, as you as a customer invest into a 3850 a few years ago and you're already in EA and now you buy a 9300, you can just take that remaining value and move that towards your 9300 purchase. That is really what's built into all of our fully committed suites. And for DNA and for Meraki, we're taking that even one step further. You can even, when your customer is like on both cloud managed and on-prem managed, wants to kind of move back and forward, they have that ability within the enterprise agreement. So that's one way. The other way is, of course, the customer gets started, and this is a journey. This is a contract. So when they start growing during the term, we want to A, make that easy for them, and B, have a way to actually capture that growth. And this is where the True Forward process comes in. A True Forward is like an annual event. It's like if you start on the 1st of January, it's the next 1st of January, we'll have a True Forward. At that moment, we'll look at, okay, you have purchased so much software, you're using so much. If you're using more than you purchase, for the remainder of the term, only looking forward from that January date, we're going to go and adjust your spend. So we're never going to look back. We're only going to do this once a year. And again, back to the example that Amanda used earlier, instead of all these different transactions at different times a year, we're going to bring everything together and adjust that once a year. And then finally, which is really important as well, is price predictability. In today's environment where prices have changed, things have gotten more expensive, customers are really trying to find any way they possible to have more predictability in terms of what the cost is going to be for their software. And this is where the EA really comes in. When a customer signs an agreement today for all the fully committed suites and all the products that they include, we'll provide them a not to exceed price. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's ultimately a price where the net price is locked down to a maximum. So for during the rest of the term, for that particular license, they will pay the exact same price. Why are we not just calling it a fixed price? Well, it's even better than that. It's a not to exceed, because if for some reason the pricing would come down from Cisco, we'll change it for them downwards as well. It just can never go up. And then for those products that they do not purchase at the start, but they are part and they add them later on, we'll lock in the discount. So instead of you going through an entire negotiation, we'll just apply the same commercials for the customer for any additional solutions that they have. And then the final piece, which is really important as well, is there is a concept called multi-suite discounts, which means that if you as a customer, you start with a switching suite within your enterprise agreement, but you're adding in, you like what you see, you add in wireless. As the customer buys more, we're going to give them some extra points of discount to reward them for that increased consumption or that increased purchase. So really, more suites we add, the more benefit to the customer that they're going to get on their pricing. So that's a value that, again, in transactional, you will not have, because every transaction is looked at in isolation. Here we're looking at the entire wallet capture that we have with the customer. So this is kind of how I would explain some of the benefits in EA. Now, I know everyone here on the call is really interested in network infrastructure and in everything with Catalyst full stack. So Amanda, can I take it over, kick it over to you again? And can you talk about how does all this work, what I just talked about, for the network infrastructure software?
Yes. So with the full stack infrastructure campaign, your end solution, you're mostly going to, when I say live, in the networking infrastructure portfolio and the security portfolio. So those are the main two that are going to make up the full stack infrastructure solution. So most of this has already been highlighted by Robin, but I wanted just to reiterate it because we get this question a lot. All right. Notice that the minimum to participate for a customer is $100,000 in an EA. All right. That will unlock what we call a full commit, and it must be enterprise-wide. So that means we have to cover their entire install base, pull it into the EA, and if it's over 100K, then they qualify for a fully committed network infrastructure EA. Also, I want to point out, this is available for 3, 5, and 7 years. So if you say, well, my customer's pretty small, I don't know that they have 100K spent. Well, then look at a 5-year, look at a 7-year, because the more we extend that out, the more you'll see that customers are eligible. Also, hone in on this, guys. This isn't available for every customer. This is a special offer that we give to customers who are eligible. Make sure you let your customers know that they're getting something special. This isn't for every customer. Also, I want to point out full commit versus partial commit. This is key compared to 2.0. In 2.0, the EA 2.0, we did not have partial commit. It was full enterprise-wide coverage or no EA. Now, as long as you qualify with the 100K enterprise-wide coverage for one suite, then you unlock the entire network infrastructure portfolio to allow for partial commits. Let me give you an example. Let's say you do 100K full enterprise-wide coverage, covering the install base for switching, and your customer's just interested in wireless, but you don't really meet the 50K minimum, don't have a large install base. You can do a partial commit at that point for wireless. So it really gives you the opportunity to land and expand the opportunity with the customer.
So, Amanda, you're saying that you're going to add a partial commit. There's no minimum requirement, but is the customer then getting all the same benefits? There's got to be some difference between an enterprise commit and just a partial.
That's perfect. So let's dive into that, because we want to show you the differences between what a customer gets with a full commit, what a customer gets with partial, and what they get transactionally. So I'm going to start at the transactional level. That's where a lot of our customers buy today. And notice they don't get any of these benefits. So I want to reiterate, for the same cost of a customer's renewal, they can go into an EA and get all of these benefits. Notice full commit, they get all the benefits of the EA. So they get the price protection, which includes that not to exceed pricing that Robin just mentioned. Guys, what that means is it's locking in the list price. So we all know and all hear from our customers right now, due to our socioeconomic environment globally, we're seeing a lot of customers very concerned about inflation. Well, if they have a fully committed suite, they're immune to inflation, because we lock in that list price for them at the time the EA starts, and their price will not increase on those fully committed and included devices that are included in the initial EA. That's very important. You forget the rest of the benefits. That one in itself is very valuable to our customers right now. Look at that bottom blue box. The average, and this is average, there's a lot of countries that have more than this, but the average global inflation rate in 2022 was 8.8%. That's a lot. Now let's take that a step further. Look at that bottom right box. A customer who entered a DNA for switching Advantage EA in FY20, who continues to purchase new licenses today, is automatically saving 24%, because our prices since FY20 on DNA Advantage have gone up 24%. So again, forget all the benefits you see up there. Just from that price protection, this customer saving 24% on every single Advantage license that they have or that they purchase moving forward.
So Amanda, are you saying that if that customer in FY20 signed a 7-year agreement, they're going to have like another good 3 years of purchasing all their software at our pre-price increase period, or the pre-pandemic prices, I would almost say?
Absolutely. It's kind of like, guys, if someone were to offer you a gasoline EA 5 years ago, right, you would be banking, because you would have locked in the price of your gasoline per gallon 5 years ago. Might have been $1 or something, where now, I don't know where you live, but it's close to $5 for me. So again, immediate cost savings throughout the agreement just from inflation. So again, we're locking in the list price, we're locking in the discount. They're also eligible for multi-suite. They get access to their licenses in the EA workspace. We're co-terming. Remember all those transactions, all those renewals, all of those disparate contract dates. We're co-terming everything into the EA. They get the benefits of the annual True Forward that Robin described. We also have value shift. Now notice partial commit, okay? Partial commit is new in 3.0. Again, you can start with just one device or one license here. But because we're not getting a full commitment from the customer, there's not as many benefits. Still more than transactionally purchasing, but you can see some differences. So partial commit is still going to get discount protection. So they're going to still get the fixed discount, but we're not going to lock in list price for them. All right. So again, just another benefit to make sure that the customer does a full commit and we get the customer into that full commit suite. And you can see across, I'm not going to go through each one, but you can see partial commit still has some benefits over transactional, but ultimately to get the full benefits of the EA, we want to put the customer in that full commit.
I do have another
area.
question for you here, Amanda. It says quarterly there on the True Forward for partial commit. Are we doing this really quarterly today?
Yes, so in theory, yes. So what we've done is, of course, 3.0 is being launched. So right now it is not automated. However, as we go into the new fiscal year, you can see that we will start to have that automation in place to where we will be doing quarterly True Forwards for partial commit. That's really important for you guys. Because if you really do a great job selling your customer, expanding your customer, they're buying a lot more, you don't have to wait for that annual True Forward to get those bookings and get that credit. You can go ahead and we can charge them at the quarterly True Forward. That way you can get your bookings revenue this quarter instead of waiting for the True Forward. So it's a really great benefit for you guys as well. Now I see value shift. So I want to double click into value shift because we have value shift within suite. But let's talk about value shift across some suites. This is another key thing. We mentioned 100K minimum only. We mentioned partial commit that's now available in 3.0. This is another differentiator between our 3.0 program. So now customers who buy a fully committed DNA and fully committed Meraki suite can now shift value back and forth between the two. What does that mean? If you have a customer that is standardized on DNA today, but knows that they're transitioning, their business model is changing, then they might have plans to move to Meraki. Well, they can save their investment, right? They can maintain their investment with Cisco by taking the residual value that's left on their DNA and value shifting it over to their Meraki when they need to. Now, I want to reiterate to you that this happens and is eligible, customers eligible for this automatically. You don't have to do anything except make sure that whatever suites you want to value shift between have a full commit at the onset of the EA. And that is the main requirement to have to open up this capability. Now,
fantastic. Amanda, I'm going to ask a question because I get a question on this topic all the time. If my customer signs an EA, they don't have both Meraki and DNA, but they have multiple suites within DNA, for instance, and they decide, let me use an example. They've got a big switching suite and they've got some wireless as well. And both of them, they're fully committed. If they decide we're going to do less ports and switching, we're going to move a number of things over to wireless and become more dense there. Is this value for a cross-suite value shift also applicable in that case?
Yes. So guys, pretty much think of it this way. All the suites you see in that circle on the right, they can move around with each other. So even if it's Meraki Vision to Meraki network infrastructure or DNA SD-WAN to DNA wireless, customers' business models change. They might need more wireless this year than they do switching. Their business needs and business models change. So we want to be able to adapt with them and we want them to be able to retain their investment with Cisco. So absolutely, if a customer wants to move some value out of their switching, maybe they decommissioned a bunch of switches, but now they have more wireless access points that they need to deploy, go ahead, the customer can go ahead and make that value shift of any residual value that they still have that's unused with, again, I'm going to caveat it again, as long as the customer had a full commit at the onset of the EA in that respective suite. So in that scenario, they had to have a full commit of switching and a full commit of wireless, and then they're able to go ahead at the True Forward and do value shifts as needed. So I know that was a lot of information that we covered, and I know we covered a lot about the full stack solution. We also covered a lot about EA 3.0. So Robin, can you show us or explain to us how that full stack solution looks when we pull that into an EA?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. It's like really to bring it home. I think, and I was talking to Molly before this session started. I think we're in the 11th session or something, which ultimately means that we've covered all these different components that you can see here. This is what Catalyst Full Stack is made of. She gave it in the introduction again. So what we wanted to do is just highlight that each of those components that we've got are actually available within an enterprise agreement. And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to look at this little donut that I talked about before, the different bubbles that represent the suites. And what I've done here is I've highlighted all of the products that are covered by the full stack. And lo and behold, you can see we've got everything represented here. So that basically means if you have a Catalyst full stack customer that is consuming all this value from Cisco, the only way that we should be providing that, remembering what we just talked about, is through an enterprise agreement and give them the best premium experience for them to manage that software. And it's a nice fit. As you can see here, we can bring everything nicely together. The only reason we wouldn't do it in the past that I heard all the time is where people said, well, listen, my customer is not fully deployed on Advantage. And as a result, it's a massive upsell. You know, they don't really want to have the conversation. Well, also there's a big change now. We are on a journey, and this is what we call the full stack infra EA, which is really what we're doing right now is adding essentials in each of the suites of the network infrastructure. So you don't have to first upsell the customer to Advantage. You'll be able to take their environment as they have it today, with some essentials included, or with all essentials if you want to. We'll be able to wrap an EA around it, then work with them on that adoption, show them the value, and upsell as they go through this. So some really exciting developments here. We already have switching available. We already have wireless that is available. Routing will be, somebody told me, added in a couple of weeks. So we're really all waiting for that and looking forward to that. But we're also taking it into Meraki. MR Advanced is going to be added. We'll be adding Nexus switching as well later in this fiscal. So it's really going to be no reason why the customer would not make sense. We can take fully committed, not fully committed. We can take any license tier. We really have a great opportunity. So that's really not stopping you. And then if you need even more reason why we would be selling it, and I do appreciate sometimes there's some partners on this call as well, but I don't want them to be aware that this is out here, because the AM community, there is a great spiff that's available for the sellers, which kind of gives them for all these customers that have available to renew, that have data, that have subscriptions coming up in the second half next year that need to be renewed. If we bring those together and position them as an EA to the customer purchases that EA, there's up to 6K of additional value that the EM can get from this as a reward for really driving the motion that we want us to lead with. So really, that's what we really wanted to highlight, just to bring it all home. Just a couple of points for your plan of attack when you sit back after this session. Really, there's some links there. Sales Connect right now is down, but sharpen your sword, get some additional details of what we just talked about. Partner with your partner, but also with the EN specialists, with the software specialists. They're aware, they know this, they know how to price this, they can build it out, build a plan, and have the conversation with your customer, and no doubt you're going to be successful. Molly, I think that's what we wanted to cover today. Any specific questions coming to mind?
No, I think I did a great job. I am going to unmute everybody. I see some clapping hands. So if you would like to ask a question, hopefully you're unmuted at this point. I did click the unmute button. I never know if it works in this scenario. If not, you can raise your hand using the hand icon at the bottom of the screen, and I'll be glad to unmute you so you can ask your question. None of our panelists bite, and so this is a great, safe environment. And it's a really small group today, so please, if you have questions, ask away. I will shamelessly promote the next Back to Basics session since we're on. It is next Thursday, April the 6th, and we'll be covering SD-WAN, which is the last of our solutions in the Catalyst full stack. So hard to believe that we've made our way all the way through. So absolutely make sure you register and join us for that session. Last call for questions. Anybody have questions? Again, you can just raise your hand. Whoops.
I was gonna say, I saw a good question from Paul come in that I just want to reiterate. Hopefully everyone saw the answer. But there are some questions around kind of what we call exceptional or extreme growth. So we do have barriers in place, or I should say guardrails in place, to make sure not only that customers aren't gaming the system, right, or incorrectly scoping the EAs, but that if they have some exceptional growth or some big point in time where they expand largely, we have exceptional growth clauses. So there's one, it's 115%, which ultimately means if in a given quarter, the customer grows more than 15% over their entitlement, that we reserve the right to do a quarterly true forward at that point for them. So you don't need to memorize this, guys. You have EA specialists that can help and articulate these restrictions. I don't like to call them restrictions, but these kind of guardrails, if you will, for the EA and for growth. But what I want you to understand is that you won't be out. Like if a customer expands heavily in one quarter, know that you have this capability to do a quarterly true forward in that case. So that way you don't have to wait for the annual true forward to get your revenue and get your bookings. We can go ahead and we can charge them that quarter that they do exceptional growth for.
That was a great explanation. I did see that question come into the Q&A panel about is there a cap on growth?
Yep. Yeah, we absolutely want to get as much revenue as we can. So if it's a big growth, let's go ahead and capture that revenue now.
All right. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions, so I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the webinar. Thank you so much, as always, for joining Back to Basics. Hope to see you here next week for SD-WAN and in the future. Have a great day.